Last week I finally decided to upload my long-awaited Apollo theory. When I started working on it, I quickly noticed that I had a lot to talk about, so I decided to divide the video in two. Last week was about whether or not Kratos had met Apollo before, while this one will be about what happened to Apollo. And the more I keep working on this theory, the more I realize that this is one of the best ones I've ever worked on. So please, for the love of our Lord and Savior, Deus Barlog, if you haven't watched the first part, stop this video and go and watch it now. There's a lot in that video that will be important in this one, and I don't have the time to go over it again. But if you don't want to do that, that's fine. The most important piece of information you need to know is that the healer of Sparta was Apollo in disguise. Assuming you're on board with that theory, now I have to answer the other important question. What happened to Apollo? Last week I ended the video with a little hint as to what my theory today was going to be. To get to the point, I believe someone in Olympus murdered Apollo. The most likely suspects being Hades, Ares, or his own father, Zeus. But I hear what you're thinking. Isn't it more plausible that Apollo died during the destruction of Olympus caused by Kratos as many seem to think? I know that seems like the easiest route to take when answering this question. But when you look at the environment of the Greek games, you can't help but feel that Apollo has been MIA for many years. First of all, out of all of the temples and places of worship, the island of Delos is the only one in complete disarray. I understand the Furies were responsible for its destruction, but if Apollo was still alive when this happened, surely he would have objected to the destruction of his home and his glorious statue. But that's not what happened. The island of Delos and the statue of Apollo were left to collect dust for many years. This seems to me like Apollo wasn't present to protect his home. The same goes with the bow found in God of War 3. Why would a mere mortal have a god's weapon if that god in question was still alive? The only time something remotely similar like this happened was during the events of God of War 1, when Zeus gave Kratos his lightning bolt. But that was just part of his power, and a power that he later took back, so Kratos didn't even keep it. So again I ask, why would have Apollo's weapon? The only explanation I can come up with is that Apollo has been long dead and this guy just happened to find his bow. Hopefully I've convinced you that Apollo hasn't been on Olympus for a very long time. Now we just need to answer who was responsible for his disappearance. Going back to what I said earlier, I believe the most sussy suspects are Hades, Ares, and Zeus. The reason I think Hades might have killed Apollo can be found in the comics as well as in the games. Because out of all of the gods who participated in the contest, Hades was the most invested. So invested that he took it upon himself to try and kill Kratos. Ironically, this attempt only helped Kratos become a Spartan captain much faster. But even on the last pages of the comics, the only god we see foaming at the mouth because he lost the contest was Hades. Hades was so petty that he violated his domain's rules and brought Alrek back to life so he could kill Kratos for him. So imagine what Hades might have done if he found out that his nephew Apollo had helped Kratos win the contest. I know this seems a little excessive, but this wouldn't be the first time Hades has behaved like this. In the God of War 2 novel, we learned that Hades was asking questions about the gravedigger who helped Kratos escape the underworld. He goes as far as saying that if he finds him, the gravedigger will beg to take Sisyphus' spot. So yeah, I can definitely see Hades trying to kill Apollo for interfering with his plans. But let's not jump the gun, because we still have two more suspects to investigate. Next, let's look at Ares. At first, Ares doesn't seem to have a motive. Why would he kill his brother Apollo? Well, his motive is a little bit more subtle than Hades, but even more fascinating if you ask me. If you don't remember, Ares and the Furies were planning to take over Olympus many years before the events of God of War 1. The Oracle Aletheia became aware of their plan using the Eyes of Truth. When the Furies learned that she was planning on telling Zeus all about it, the Furies ripped her eyes and placed them inside the Lantern of Delos, which was then sunk to prevent anyone from getting to them. But this left a loose end. Apollo. Like I said earlier, if Apollo had found out what happened to his island, he would have done something about it. So while the Furies dealt with Aletheia and the Eyes of Truth, Ares dealt with Apollo on Mount Olympus. I kinda see this murder similar to the ending of the Casino movie, where they invite Danny DeVito over and they trick him thinking that we're just gonna hang out, and then they, well, I can't really show that scene here on YouTube, but just go and watch the movie. If Ares had something to do with Apollo's disappearance, it was because he was trying to cover up his tracks. Ares couldn't have Apollo investigating who had destroyed the statue, because this would eventually reveal the Eyes of Truth, and Zeus would have learned of his son's ambitions to overthrow his father. So before this happened, Ares found a way to kill his own brother. Zeus became so worried about this happening again, so he introduced the law we hear about in God of War 1.
Zeus has forbidden the gods from waging war on each other.
The reason this law exists could be because Apollo had been murdered by someone on Olympus. But let's not be giving Zeus any innocent awards so fast, because in my mind, Zeus is hands down suspect number 1 on this murder case. And for the smoking gun evidence, I have to give a big thanks to Killer Aiden32 for pointing me in the right direction. This piece of information is so important that it will answer mysteries you didn't even know were mysteries. For example, let me ask you something about the comics. Why is it that the gods chose Asclepius and Brosia as the prize for the contest? Doesn't this seem a little bit disrespectful to Asclepius? Imagine if someone breaks into your home at 3 AM and it turns out to be a random guy whom your friends dared to steal your TV. You would be pissed at your friends, right? It's the same thing for Asclepius. Wouldn't Asclepius object to this disrespect? He would, if he was alive. That's right, this just became a double homicide, guys. Think about it. How come Asclepius is in the temple when Kratos arrives to take the ambrosia? The answer to this question can be found in Greek mythology itself. If you don't know, Asclepius was the Greek god of healing. At first, Asclepius was welcome on Olympus, but as his powers grew, Asclepius began to challenge the order of things. Being the god of healing, it wasn't enough for him to combat illnesses. He went further and found a way to bring mortals back to life. When Hades found out about this, he brought it to the attention of his brother, Zeus. Zeus too deemed that Asclepius was disrupting the order of things. He thought that the line between god and mortal would be blurred if Asclepius was allowed to continue reviving humans. Zeus became so concerned that he threw a thunderbolt at Asclepius, causing him to die on the spot. This could be why the gods of Olympus didn't think twice about playing with his belongings. Asclepius had been long dead. But what does Asclepius' death have to do with Zeus murdering Apollo? Well, if you watched part 1, you would remember that Apollo is Asclepius' father. And according to Greek mythology, when Apollo learned that his father had murdered his son, he got back at his father by killing the Cyclops who had made his thunderbolt. For this act of vengeance, Zeus turned Apollo into a mortal and punished him to serve the king of Thessaly for a full year. However, this whole story could be much darker in the God of War universe. Instead of killing the Cyclops, Apollo could have tried to kill his own father. But when Zeus found out about this, Apollo was exiled from Olympus, not just for a year, but forever. This is why the midwife knows where the healer lives. It's not like the gravedigger who was in Athens for a little bit and then returned to Olympus to resume his role as Zeus. No, the midwife knows where the healer lives because he truly lives there. This was never a murder case, it was a treason case. After being exiled from Olympus, Apollo built his home near Sparta and took up the mantle of the healer. This means Apollo isn't even shapeshifting like Zeus does with the gravedigger persona. Under this hood is the face of a god. This is why his eyes still glow yellow. Very similar to how his eyes glow in the God of War 3 costume. To me, this theory is really exciting, because if Kratos ever returns to Greece, he could be greeted by Apollo, the new ruler of Olympus. And wouldn't it be interesting if we learned that the reason humans survived the plague caused by Hermes' death wasn't because of the power of hope, but instead it was thanks to Apollo taking the seat as the new ruler of Olympus. Remember, Apollo was also the god of healing, so healing all afflicted mortals wouldn't even be a big deal for him. Guys, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but come on, this theory rocks. Apollo being exiled from Olympus answers so many questions and offers some really nice implications for the future. His exile explains why his temple and statues are in disarray. It could potentially explain why Asclepius is missing from the comics. It explains why he seems to hate the gods of Olympus. It also gives a possible explanation for Greek humans living a healthy life after the destruction of Olympus. I don't know, you could think this was Zeus in disguise, even though he was already afraid of a son taking his place just like he did to his father, while also having a prophecy of a marked warrior looming over his own head. You could think that. Or you could believe that this was Apollo all along and get answers to all of these delicious questions. The choice is yours. But whatever your choice is, definitely let me know in the comments section below. This has been one of the most fun videos I've worked on in a while, so I really want to know what you guys think. Once again, I want to give a big thanks to Killer Aiden32 for pointing me in the right direction. Your tip made this video twice as awesome. But with that said, I want to give a big thanks to all of my members for supporting the channel monthly. People like the G-Man420, Thrasher209, Mangolito, Daniel Kenya, Maxwell555, Iceberg995, and Nolan Lynch, to name a few, are a big reason this channel is still going strong. Your support allows me to take my sweet time to research these obscure topics. Otherwise, it would be nothing but reaction videos. So for that, I thank you. Here, a couple kisses. That's especially for Mangolito, he got a little bit jealous last time. That kiss is for you. I would also like to thank everyone who likes and shares my videos. I know it doesn't seem like much, but trust me, it really does help. And with that said, thanks for watching. And remember, go forth in the name of Olympus.